My Personal Recollections of Thomas Troward by Harry Gaze. Chapter 11. Troward as Prophet. Thomas Troward was extremely interested in a variety of doctrines of his day, including the prophecies that were based on the far-famed and historic crown stone of Scotland that had been installed at Westminster Abbey, the reputed prophetic measurements of the pyramids, the theory, given prominence in the early part of the century, that the Anglo-Saxon race was the lost tribes of Israel, and the Rosicrucian philosophy of his time. As a mathematician, one of the studies in which he excelled, he was profoundly interested in the claim that the destiny of mankind and the world in which we live were clearly portrayed and predicted by the builders of the pyramids. Mr. Troward sought for a scientific basis of prophecy in his idea of a prototype in the spiritual world of everything provided in the external world. He studied the prophecies of the Bible, particularly of Ezekiel and St. John. He defined in unique terms the real meaning of the Antichrist and what it portended in these times and in the near future. Personally, I believe that prophecy is like dynamite, or speaking in more modern terms, atomic force. It can be used for great good, rich blessing for humanity and for the individual. Destructive prophecy can externalize in confusion and light the fires of a hell on earth. As an individual result to himself, under the law of cause and effect, in which Mr. Troward so implicitly believed, the prophecy of his death could be fatal, and the same to others, to the extent that they accepted the prophetic word. In regard to national or world results, the individual prophecy would join forces with the predictions of the mass mind, or the influence of groups of strong, positive minds. Prophecy is our most effective tool, or our most deadly weapon. I say to all readers with all the earnestness at my command, see that your prophecies are intelligently constructive and that their fulfillment will work out beneficially to the individuals or the world at large for whom you make your predictions. Sussex, England, January 31st, 58. Dear Mr. Gaze, what a joyful surprise to me to receive a link with the happy old days of the Higher Thought Center, later known as INTA, which I first contacted in 1906. Miss Bradshaw has written to me enclosing your letter of January 25th, asking if I have any letters from our beloved Mr. Troward to contribute. I did not know any of his family, but only himself as one of his devoted students. This one and only letter I now enclose. It was written in response to that Sunday lecture at Doré Gallery when he prophesied his coming departure from this world. Footnote, Troward lectured at the Doré Gallery, 34-35 New Bond Street, today's Sotheby's auction room, well after 1909, the year from which his book The Doré Lectures on Mental Science derives. An interesting article on the Doré Gallery appears in New Light on Thomas Troward, Journal 5, 1991, page 24-30, London, the Thomas Troward Society. I burst into tears as he said, I may never see any of your dear faces again. A few Sundays previously, he had foretold, to the astonishment and dismay of his congregation, the coming of 2 great world wars. I suppose that came through his calculations of the pyramids? Footnote, see Troward's The Years 1914 to 1923 in Bible Prophecy. I am 77 years of age and still hold Latin classes in these parts to which I was evacuated in 1940. All in love and fellowship, Miss L.G. Well, no doubt some of my readers will find consolation in the fact that Mr. Troward prophesied only 2 world wars. This may help them to overcome the rather bad habit of today in predicting a 3rd world war. But in prophecy for yourself, remember prophecy of death is the weapon by which many commit suicide, unintentionally of course. Prophesy definitely more and ever more life. Footnote, in February 1913, Troward addressed an overflow audience at the Doré Gallery on the subject of the Great Pyramid. In the closing chapter of Bible Mystery and Bible Meaning, Mr. Troward refers to Bible prophecies of the end of the world, which are now interpreted to mean the end of an age or era. He says, now all through the Bible we find the statement of 2 leading principles which are diametrically opposed to one another. The principle of sonship or reliance upon God, and its opposite, or the denial of God. And it is this latter that is called the spirit of Antichrist. The widespread development of this inverted principle, the Bible tells us, is the key to the history of the latter days, those times in which we now live. The Bible tells us that Though the struggle may be severe, the victory must at last remain with those who worship God, and the reason for this becomes evident if we look at the fundamental nature of the principles themselves. One is the principle of the affirmative, and the other is the principle of the negative. One is that which builds up, and the other is that which pulls down. I would suggest that we stoutly maintain the constructive and affirmative point of view. Let us look at the vital side of the picture today. More and more people are running to and fro and increasing knowledge of the omnipresence of God and the reality of the living, healing, and indwelling Christ. These very brief extracts do not do justice to Mr. Troward's viewpoint. The whole chapter should be read studiously by those interested. He goes into the subject thoroughly, defining the difference between the feminine anima mundi, or the soul of the world, as distinguished from the masculine animus Dei, or the divine spirit. In reading any book, do not let even the appearance of negative prophecy overcome you. Accept the good prophecies and reject any that to the slightest degree may appear negative. Commune with God and make good prophecies. Get others to prophesy good with you, and make your thought and word power a living belt of light around the globe, and the good thing of which you foretell will surely come to pass sometime, somewhere. What Thomas Troward is seeking in this chapter is to illustrate the effect of two modes of thought. Do not hesitate to read Troward's teachings, and even the Bible, selectively, with the spiritual vision of true interpretation, and think affirmatively, speak affirmatively, and live affirmatively.